pre-registered coordinates, a wolfpack of sea drones already in the water, and a Russian warship crew about to find out that the Black Sea is no longer theirs. 7 Ukrainian Magura V5 sea drones, each carrying 320 kilograms of high explosive, each running a surface skimming profile at 42 knots, radar cross-sections smaller than a floating tire. Guided by satellite relay from a shore team that had spent weeks studying one ship's patrol rhythm, logging every course correction, every speed change, every predictable turn. The warship didn't see them coming. By the time the first contact alarm sounded on the bridge, 3 drones had already locked onto their terminal approach vectors. The remaining 4 were splitting into a flanking envelope, a classic wolfpack geometry designed to saturate a ship's close-in defenses from multiple bearings at once. 40 seconds. That's how long the crew had to respond. They didn't have 40 seconds worth of options. I'm your host at EastAlert, where we analyze the battles that change wars. Today, we're reconstructing one of the most tactically sophisticated naval ambushes of this conflict. A strike that didn't just destroy a warship. It severed the illusion of safe passage for an entire shadow fleet financing Russia's war machine. What happened in that stretch of Black Sea water wasn't just a drone strike. It was the culmination of a months-long intelligence operation, a deliberate targeting cycle, and a message aimed not at the warship's crew, but at every tanker captain, every sanctions-evading shipping broker, every petroleum trader still willing to run cargo under Russian naval escort. The message: the sea doesn't protect you anymore. Stay with me. What unfolds over the next 28 minutes will show you exactly how Ukraine turned its lack of a conventional navy into the most asymmetric naval advantage in modern warfare history. To understand the strike, you need to understand what it was protecting. The Black Sea has become a corridor, not for legitimate commerce, for ghost cargoes. Sanctioned crude oil moving from Russian ports under the flags of third-party nations, insured through shell companies, tracked by no one who officially admits to tracking them. This is the Shadow Fleet, and it's not a metaphor. It's a real network of aging tankers, falsified manifests, and middlemen operating across jurisdictions chosen specifically for their refusal to cooperate with Western sanctions enforcement. Russian petroleum revenue, even diminished by price caps and embargo pressure, still flows through this corridor. And Russia can't let it close. Because if the Shadow Fleet stops moving, the war financing equation changes. That's why the warship was there. Not to project power. Not to threaten NATO shipping lanes, to escort, to shepherd, to serve as a mobile guarantee that the tankers running under its protection would arrive without a Ukrainian naval drone turning them into a fuel-fed fireball in international waters. The vessel involved was a Tarantul-class missile corvette, a Soviet-era platform roughly 56 meters long, displacing 540 tons at full load. Armed with 2 twin-launcher P-270 Moskit anti-ship missile systems, a 76mm AK-176 deck gun, and 2 AK-630 close-in weapon systems rated for 5,000 rounds per minute at engagement ranges of 4 kilometers. On paper, a capable coastal defense platform with real area denial punch for its size. In practice, a ship designed in the 1970s to fight other ships. Not a wolfpack of autonomous surface vehicles approaching from below the radar horizon. That gap between design intent and battlefield reality is where Ukraine built its ambush. Which weapon system do you think was most decisive in this strike? A. The Magura V5 sea drone. B. The shore-based targeting intelligence network. Or C. The electronic warfare suppression that masked the drone launch? Comment your answer below. The tactical breakdown is coming. The intelligence operation that enabled this strike began not with drones, but with data. Ukrainian naval intelligence, working with signals, assets, commercial satellite imagery analysis, and human intelligence sourced from maritime commercial networks, had been building a pattern-of-life profile on Russian Black Sea escort operations for months before the strike. The Tarantul corvettes operating in the escort role had developed predictable behavioral signatures. They followed preferred transit corridors. They held to consistent speed ranges. They reduced their radar emissions during certain phases of escort missions, presumably to avoid presenting an easily trackable electronic signature. The irony wasn't lost on Ukrainian targeting analysts. The corvettes, trying to appear invisible, had made themselves predictable. Predictability, in modern warfare, is a terminal condition. The shore team had identified a specific choke point in the corvette's patrol pattern, a turn point roughly 47 nautical miles southwest of the Crimean coastline where the warship consistently altered course to maintain escort positioning ahead of its charge. At that turn, for a window of about 8 to 11 minutes, the Corvette's bow presented a specific aspect angle toward the southwest. Its AK-630 close-in weapon systems, mounted port and starboard amidships, were briefly at a geometrical disadvantage relative to a threat approaching from the ship's starboard quarter. That 8-minute window was the strike window. The Magura V5 is a Ukrainian-developed autonomous surface vehicle. Its specifications show what happens when necessity drives engineering. The vessel is 5 meters long. It displaces roughly 990 kilograms loaded. Powered by a Honda Marine outboard engine, it reaches 42 knots in calm sea states. Though operational speeds for terminal approach are typically held lower to reduce visual and acoustic signature. Its operational range exceeds 800 kilometers, enabling deep water operations well beyond the horizon of conventional coastal drone launch points. The warhead is not subtle. 320 kilograms of explosive filling, shaped for penetrating effect against surface vessel hull plating, optimized to detonate either on contact below the waterline or on a timed proximity fuse sequence. Against a 540-ton Corvette, that's not a disabling charge. It's a structural obliteration charge. 7 of them, approaching simultaneously from multiple vectors, are a targeting problem no 1970s-era Soviet close-in weapon system was designed to solve. But here is where the story gets more complicated, and where the Ukrainian shore team almost lost the operation before it began. The strike had been planned for a specific weather window, moderate sea state, Beaufort 3 to 4, with visibility above 8 nautical miles, favoring the Magura's surface-skimming approach geometry. Satellite imagery confirmed the Corvette was on its standard escort route, the target tanker, a 47,000 deadweight-ton crude carrier under a flag of convenience, visually identified through commercially available satellite imagery as the same vessel that had made 5 previous transits through this corridor, was 9 nautical miles astern of the Corvette, exactly where escort positioning doctrine would put it. Launch authority was granted. 6 of the 7 Magura units transitioned cleanly to their programmed approach vectors. Unit 4 developed a guidance anomaly 14 minutes after launch, a software fault in its inertial navigation handoff protocol that sent it into a slow, unguided turn to port, away from the target bearing. Shore team operators detected the anomaly within 90 seconds. The decision was immediate. Unit 4 was remotely commanded to self-destruct in open water. 6 drones remaining. 6 was still enough. But the strike geometry had to be recalculated in real time, redistributing the flanking envelope across the remaining units to maintain coverage of the Corvette's defensive arc. The recalculation took 4 minutes. 4 minutes of satellite-linked data processing, manual operator override, and new terminal approach vectors transmitted to 6 autonomous vehicles already moving at sea. 4 minutes feels like nothing when you're describing it. When you're sitting in a shore operations center watching 6 weapons converge on a target that doesn't yet know it's dying, 4 minutes is an eternity. Stay with me. What the shore team did in those 4 minutes is one of the most important tactical decisions of the entire operation. And understanding it explains why Ukraine's naval drone program has achieved what no one thought a landlocked navy could achieve in the Black Sea. The recalculated approach geometry assigned the 2 fastest-running units, Magura units 1 and 2, to the Corvette's starboard bow quadrant. Their job was to arrive first, not to hit the ship, to trigger the close-in weapon system response. To make the AK-630 mountings rotate forward and starboard toward the visible threat, burning through their ready ammunition at 5,000 rounds per minute chasing surface targets at sea level. While the AK-630S were busy, Units 3, 5, 6, and 7 would come in from the Corvette's port side and stern, the geometry that the ship's defensive arc was suddenly inadequate to cover. This is not a new concept in naval warfare. It's the wolfpack principle applied to autonomous surface vehicles. What's new is that Ukraine was executing it with $200,000 assets against a warship worth tens of millions of dollars, guided by a shore team operating on commercial satellite uplinks, using a drone that Ukrainian engineers built from components sourced from suppliers who had no idea what their motors and electronics were going to be used for. That is the tactical innovation story of this war. How many warship escort missions had the targeted Tarantul-class Corvette completed before this operation? A, 3, B, 11, C, at least 17? We'll have the answer at the end of this video. The Corvette's radar operator picked up the first surface contacts at roughly 11 nautical miles. Initial classification: unknown surface contacts, low profile, multiple tracks. The signature was ambiguous. At that range, a Magura V5 running at reduced speed presents a radar return comparable to a wave crest, waterborne debris, or a small fishing vessel. The radar operator's first call was probably debris, or possibly small boats. The second look, 2 minutes later, told a different story. Multiple contacts, all converging, all accelerating. Course and speed analysis, intercept geometry. Time to engagement, falling below 7 minutes. The bridge watch officer ordered general quarters. The AK-630 mountings trained to their bearing assignments. The 76 mm deck gun was brought to action stations. The ship began a course alteration, turning toward the threat to unmask additional arcs and reduce the exposure of the stern quarter. That course alteration was tactically sound. It was also predicted. The Ukrainian shore team had modeled the Corvette's likely defensive maneuver. A turn toward the first threat is the instinctive naval response. Present the bow, use speed to open range on the nearest contacts, bring all forward weapons to bear. The shore team had pre-programmed terminal approach curvature into units 3, 5, 6, and 7 to account for this exact maneuver. The approach vectors were not straight lines. They were curves, computed intercept solutions that would still bring the flanking units onto the ship's vulnerable beam and stern regardless of a starboard turn. The AK-630S opened fire at roughly 4,200 meters, tracking units 1 and 2 as they accelerated to 42 knots on their bow approach vectors. The gun system is devastating in its designed role. 5,000 rounds per minute from 2 mountings, firing 30 mm depleted steel rounds at a muzzle velocity of 960 meters per second. Against a single incoming surface target with a predictable course, the AK-630 is functionally a guaranteed kill. Against 2 simultaneous inbound contacts, it splits its engagement capacity. Unit 2 was destroyed at approximately 2,800 meters. The AK-630 rounds walked across its hull in a fraction of a second, detonating the warhead in a column of white water and diesel smoke visible for 12 nautical miles. Subscribe to EastAlert if you want to understand how modern warfare actually works. This is not the version they teach in military academies. This is what happens when a nation without a navy decides to change what a navy means. Unit 1 continued. At 2,100 meters, a near miss from AK-630 fire damaged its propulsion system, reducing speed. At 1,800 meters, the second AK-630 mounting, which had been training to track the port-side flanking units, was redirected to Unit 1 as the more immediate threat. That redirection was the opening. Units 3 and 5 reached the Corvette's port beam at 900 meters with no close-in weapon system coverage. The AK-630 port mounting was still traversing back from its redirected engagement when Unit 3 impacted below the waterline at frame 34, roughly amidships on the port side. 320 kilograms of high explosive against a 3-meter hull section of 12mm rolled steel plate. The detonation didn't just open a hole in the hull. It compressed the frame structure inward, folded the keel at the point of impact, and sent a pressure wave through the engineering spaces that ruptured both main fuel tanks and the port auxiliary generator compartment. The resulting secondary fires involved roughly 14,000 liters of diesel fuel and the stored propellant for 2 of the 4 P-270 Moskit missile systems. Unit 5 impacted 11 seconds later, 3 meters aft of Unit 3's entry point. By then, the ship was already beginning a severe port list as flooding overwhelmed the damaged compartments. Unit 5's detonation was geometrically precise. It hit the already compromised frame section, extending the breach another 6 meters along the waterline and opening the main engine room to direct sea flooding. Unit 1, limping on damaged propulsion, reached the starboard bow at 1,400 meters and struck the hull at the waterline below the forward magazine. 3 impacts, 11 seconds apart. Combined explosive charge, 960 kilograms. The Tarantul-class Corvette was designed to survive a single conventional torpedo hit and remain combat capable. It was not designed to survive what had just happened to it. If you believe tactics win wars, not numbers, not budget, not raw industrial capacity, but tactical innovation, intelligence superiority, and the willingness to take asymmetric risk, type EastAlert in the comments right now. Here is where the story pivots. Because the ship was sinking, that much was clear within 4 minutes of the first impact. But the operation wasn't over. Units 6 and 7 were still in the water, fully functional, warheads intact. The shore team had to make a decision in real time. 2 armed Magura units, roughly 800 meters from a sinking warship, with a sanctioned Shadow Fleet tanker sitting 9 nautical miles to the southeast, still making way. The decision the Ukrainian operators made in that moment, and what it reveals about strategic intent that extends far beyond this single engagement, is the piece of this operation that military analysts will be studying long after the specific details of hull breach geometry have been forgotten. Units 6 and 7 were not redirected to the tanker. They were held on the sinking Corvette. Both units impacted the stern section, targeting the waterline beneath the P-270 Moskit launcher housings on the aft deck. The secondary detonation of partially fueled missile propellant added 3 more explosions to the burning hull in a sequence captured on drone video from a Ukrainian reconnaissance asset orbiting above the engagement zone. The choice to leave the tanker untouched was deliberate, and it was strategically sophisticated in a way that pure destructive capacity cannot capture. Striking the tanker would have put one more hull on the bottom of the Black Sea. Leaving it alive, with a clear view of what had just happened to its escort, sent a different message. To the tanker captain, to the shipping broker, to the insurance underwriter, to every actor in the Shadow Fleet logistics chain who needed to evaluate whether Russian naval escort still meant anything. The answer the tanker's captain transmitted to his handlers in that moment, as he reversed course and started moving away from the burning wreck of his escort at maximum available speed, was clearer than any tactical briefing document. It didn't. What would NATO planners have done differently at that decision point? Strike the tanker or leave it as a surviving witness? Comment your analysis below. This is exactly the kind of strategic calculus that separates tactical success from operational impact. The Tarantul-class Corvette went below the surface roughly 23 minutes after the first drone impact. Ukrainian General Staff reporting, subsequently corroborated by satellite imagery analysis of the debris field and by commercial maritime AIS data showing the sudden course reversal of the escorted tanker, confirmed the loss of the vessel. Intercepted Russian naval communications. Fragments released by Ukrainian intelligence services through controlled disclosure to OSINT investigators indicated serious confusion at the Black Sea Fleet command level in the immediate aftermath. The intercepts, assessed as authentic by independent analysts who reviewed the technical characteristics of the transmissions, showed a command structure struggling to reconcile what had happened with their existing threat models. The phrase that appeared in multiple intercepts was essentially a variation of, confirmed the contact threat was multiple autonomous surface vehicles, no crew, no captain, no conventional naval vessel. Just machines, guided from shore, hitting a warship that had every reason to consider itself protected by its own close-in weapon systems. The Black Sea Fleet's response was to immediately reduce the frequency of surface escort missions for Shadow Fleet tanker traffic. This wasn't publicly announced. It was inferred from AIS data showing Shadow Fleet tankers increasingly clustering in port rather than transiting on their previous schedules, and from a notable reduction in surface radar emissions consistent with Tarantul-class patrol patterns in the southwestern sector. The Corvette that had been completing escort missions with regularity, satellite imagery and OSINT tracking had documented at least 17 such missions before the strike, was gone. The institutional knowledge of that crew, the practiced coordination between that specific ship and its shore control infrastructure, the informal relationships between that vessel's captain and the Shadow Fleet brokers who had relied on his presence for confidence. All of it gone in 23 minutes. The economic calculus of the Shadow Fleet began to shift, not because one warship had been destroyed, because the marginal cost of Russian naval protection had just increased in a way that no pricing model had accounted for. If the Black Sea Fleet couldn't guarantee safe passage even for an escorted transit, the risk premium on Shadow Fleet operations would rise. Higher risk premiums mean higher brokerage fees, mean higher transportation costs, mean less margin for the petroleum traders moving sanctioned Russian crude. Less margin means fewer willing participants. Fewer willing participants means slower throughput. Slower throughput means less revenue flowing toward the war machine. This is the compounding logic of infrastructure interdiction. You don't have to shut down the pipeline completely. You have to raise the cost of using it until it becomes economically marginal. Ukraine understood this. Russia didn't believe it could happen. The Magura V5 program had been operational for some time before this strike. Its development is one of the more remarkable stories of wartime engineering improvisation in the modern era. The original concept came out of discussions within Ukrainian special operations and naval intelligence circles about how to contest the Black Sea without a surface fleet. The intellectual problem was real. How do you deny a sea to an adversary that controls most of the coastal geography when you have no navy capable of operating in those waters without being destroyed? The answer was to redefine what a naval asset means. If a ship requires a crew to operate, the crew is the vulnerability. Eliminate the crew. Make the vessel autonomous, cheap, and expendable. Make it small enough that conventional naval radar struggles to classify it. Give it enough explosive payload to do catastrophic damage to anything it reaches. Build it in quantities so that losing units to enemy fire doesn't collapse the operational capability. And then develop the intelligence infrastructure to put the weapon on target. Because the limiting factor in this kind of warfare is never the weapon, it's the targeting. Ukraine solved the targeting problem through an unlikely combination of commercial satellite imagery services, signals intelligence, human intelligence networks operating within maritime commercial communities, and the pattern analysis capabilities that came from months of patient observation. The Tarantul Corvette that died in this operation died because Ukrainian analysts had spent long enough watching it to know exactly when it would be most vulnerable. That's not a coincidence. That's doctrine. The obstacle that nearly derailed the entire operation wasn't the loss of Unit 4 to the guidance anomaly. That was manageable. The more fundamental obstacle had come weeks earlier, when the Ukrainian shore team had initially identified a different Tarantul-class vessel as the primary target, a ship with similar patrol patterns but deployed in a slightly different operational area. Extensive preparation had been invested in that target's specific behavioral profile. The target changed 48 hours before the originally planned launch window. The Black Sea Fleet rotated its escort assignments. The expected vessel was replaced by a different unit. Same class, different hull number, different crew, subtly different behavioral patterns. The shore team had to rebuild their pattern of life analysis from scratch. Not completely. The class-level behavioral patterns held, and the general patrol geometry was consistent. But the specific timing, of course, alterations, the preferred speed settings, the radar emission schedules. All of it had to be recharacterized on the basis of observations of the new vessel over a compressed window. They got 41 hours of observation data before launching against a target that ideally would have required weeks of dedicated tracking. The fact that the strike geometry was still accurate enough to achieve 4 out of 6 planned impacts, given the Unit 4 anomaly, the guidance recalculation, and the compressed intelligence window, speaks to both the quality of Ukrainian targeting methodology and the fundamental predictability of Soviet doctrine naval patrol operations. Russian naval doctrine, developed through the Cold War and never fundamentally reformed, assumes adversary inferiority at sea. It assumes that the primary threat to coastal corvettes comes from other surface vessels or submarines. It assumes that close-in weapon systems rated for engagement of sea-skimming missiles will also handle surface threats by default. These assumptions aren't wrong within the framework of conventional naval warfare. They are catastrophically wrong against a wolfpack of purpose-built autonomous surface vehicles operated by a shore team that has read the ship's calendar. The battlefield damage assessment compiled by Ukrainian naval intelligence after the strike was comprehensive. The Tarantul-class Corvette, total loss. 2 P-270 Moskit anti-ship missile systems destroyed with the ship. AK-176-76mm deck gun mounting destroyed. 2 AK-630 close-in weapon systems destroyed. Crew. Ukraine reported significant casualties consistent with the rapid sinking of the vessel. Russian sources did not publicly confirm crew figures, which is itself a form of confirmation. The Black Sea Fleet press apparatus, when it chooses to deny an event, issues denials. When it doesn't issue denials, OSINT investigators have learned to read the silence. The escorted Shadow Fleet tanker, undamaged, reversed course, returned to port, and did not make another transit through that corridor for an extended period. Commercially available AIS tracking confirmed the vessel's movements. The tanker's management company, operating through the layered corporate structure typical of Shadow Fleet participants, did not publicly comment. Combined assessed monetary value of destroyed naval assets, roughly $45 million. Direct economic disruption to Shadow Fleet transit revenue for the affected route, estimated at a multiplier of that figure over subsequent months as insurance costs increased and transit volumes declined. Magura V5 units expended, 7. Estimated procurement cost per unit, roughly $200,000. Total strike cost, approximately $1. $4 million, $45 million destroyed. A significant multiplier in economic disruption achieved. Cost to Ukraine, $1, $4 million and 6 hours of shore team operation time. That ratio is why this program continues. That ratio is why Russia has no good answer to it. The tactical lessons of this engagement were studied by naval analysts across multiple militaries. The core takeaway wasn't technological. The Magura V5 is impressive engineering, but the underlying concepts — autonomous surface vehicle, large explosive payload, wolfpack geometry — were not novel at the time of this operation. What was novel was execution fidelity. Every element of the strike worked because the targeting was correct, the timing was correct. The approach geometry accounted for the expected defensive maneuver. The secondary assault wave was positioned to exploit the attention of the close-in weapon systems on the primary wave. The decision about what to do with the surviving units after the Corvette was sinking reflected clear strategic intent rather than improvised opportunism. This was not a lucky strike. This was a planned, deliberate assassination of a specific warship, executed with the precision that military planners usually associate with special operations forces or precision-guided air munitions. It was achieved with unmanned surface vehicles operated from a shore station by a team of analysts and drone operators whose average age, by Ukrainian military demography in this phase of the conflict, was probably somewhere in the mid-20s. Modern warfare doesn't look like naval battles looked in 1943, or 1982, or even 2003. Modern warfare looks like 7 autonomous boats, a satellite uplink, and a targeting team that spent months reading the enemy's calendar. Ukraine wrote that definition. In real time. Under fire. Without a navy. The answer to this video's tactical quiz, the Tarantul-class Corvette targeted in this operation had completed at least 17 documented escort missions prior to the strike. Option C was correct. 17 missions without incident had built the crew's confidence, had built the Shadow Fleet's reliance on this specific escort asset, had built the patrol rhythm that Ukrainian intelligence used as a targeting scaffold. 17 missions of routine success created the conditions for the 18th to be catastrophic. Routine breeds predictability. Predictability breeds vulnerability. That's not a new lesson. It's written into the doctrine of every asymmetric warfare theorist from Sun Tzu to the present day. What this operation demonstrated is that it still applies in the age of autonomous weapons, that a superpower's naval corvette and a guerrilla's sea drone both obey the same fundamental law. If you do the same thing, the same way often enough, your enemy will eventually be waiting for you. The tactical lesson for Russian naval planners was explicit. Variable patrol patterns, randomized course alteration timing, deliberate changes to radar emission schedules, unpredictable speed profiles. Don't give the observer enough data to build a reliable model. The tactical lesson for Ukrainian planners was equally explicit. The model works. Patience in intelligence collection translates directly into precision in execution. 3 questions deserve your reflection. Was the decision to leave the Shadow Fleet tanker untouched the right call? Or did the Ukrainian shore team sacrifice a concrete second target for a strategic message that Russia's command structure would simply absorb and adapt to? The argument for striking the tanker is obvious. More economic disruption, a more direct signal to shipping participants. The argument against is that a surviving witness generates fear in a way that a second wreck cannot. Where do you come down on that decision? Could the Black Sea Fleet have prevented this strike with different doctrine? The technology wasn't the limiting factor on either side. The Tarantul-class Corvette had weapons capable of intercepting the approaching drones. It did intercept 2 of them. The failure wasn't capability. It was pattern predictability. With genuinely randomized patrol behavior, would the Ukrainian shore team have had enough data to time the attack? Or would the operation have simply required more patience? And what would you have done differently if you were the Ukrainian shore team commander with 6 functional drones, a sinking warship, and an undamaged tanker 9 nautical miles away, waiting for your decision? Will we see this playbook replicated in other maritime theaters where asymmetric actors face conventional naval power? Comment YES or no, because the implications extend far beyond the Black Sea. Subscribe to EastAlert, because we break down the battles that textbooks will study for decades, not the version cleaned up for diplomatic consumption, the real version, where autonomous boats sink warships, where shore teams make strategic decisions in real time, where a nation without a navy redefines what naval power means in the 21st century. Real tactics. Real consequences. EastAlert. The Black Sea is quieter along that escort corridor now. The tanker traffic has shifted. Slower, more cautious, with longer gaps between transits. The wreck of the Tarantul-class Corvette rests somewhere on the seabed, alongside 2 destroyed P-270 missiles that never found a target and 2 AK-630 gun mountings that ran out of time. Silent reminders that modern warfare punishes tactical predictability without mercy. The water closed over it in 23 minutes. The lesson it left behind will last considerably longer. Stay vigilant.